You're fired. Marcus Reed slowly lowered the wrench in his hand. Sir, can I at least know why? The CEO stared at him. Because you've been dead weight for 7 years. He reached forward, tore the company badge from Marcus's shirt, and dropped it into the trash. You're a maintenance man, Marcus. We brought in real engineers to take this company into the future. Marcus looked at the badge. Then he looked past the CEO, at the massive production machine humming behind him, and he said nothing, because there was something that CEO didn't know. The machine he had just handed to a younger engineer was built by Marcus. Every sensor, every hidden diagnostic system, every line of code. And 19 days after Marcus walked out, that machine would begin to collapse. And when the company finally discovered who could save it, they would have to bring back the man they had called useless. But by then, Marcus would have a choice to make. Would he save the company that humiliated him? Would he let it burn? Before we get there, let's go back to the day everything changed. Marcus Reed walked out of Meridian Precision Systems on a Tuesday afternoon. He carried a battered toolbox in one hand. His old company badge sat inside his jacket pocket. 7 years of work, reduced to a few pounds of metal and plastic. The parking lot was almost empty. Few workers saw him. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody came over. They simply looked away. That was the cruelest part. Being fired was loud. Being erased was quiet. Marcus placed the toolbox inside his 12-year-old Honda. The paint was fading. The air conditioner barely worked, but the engine started, because Marcus knew how to keep broken things alive. He sat behind the wheel for almost a minute. Then his phone rang. Ali? It was his 8-year-old daughter, Maya, his entire world. Yeah, baby girl. Are you coming home early? Marcus looked at the company building through his windshield. Yeah. A pause. I'll be home soon. Can we make spaghetti? Marcus swallowed hard. Make whatever you want. He ended the call before she could hear his voice break. 3 months earlier, Meridian Precision Systems had been one of the most respected manufacturing companies in the region. Its crown jewel was called the Titan line. It was a fully integrated manufacturing system capable of producing, testing, and calibrating complex hydraulic components with almost no human intervention. The Titan line was the reason a major industrial client had signed Meridian to a $12 million annual contract. It was the heartbeat of the company, and Marcus Reed had built it. Not supervised it, not assisted with it, built it. He built the machine, but almost nobody knew that. Marcus had never had an engineering degree. He had never sat in an expensive university laboratory, and his job title still said Senior Maintenance Technician. The previous plant director had trusted Marcus because he cared about one thing: results. Years earlier, Marcus had repaired a compressor that outside contractors said needed to be replaced. They estimated the replacement would cost nearly $100,000. Marcus found a tiny crack nobody else had noticed. He repaired it. The machine ran perfectly. The plant director looked at him and asked, "Who taught you to do that?" Marcus smiled. "My grandfather." That was the beginning. The director gave Marcus access to equipment nobody expected a maintenance technician to touch, and Marcus used that opportunity to build something extraordinary. For 3 years he designed the Titan line during lunch breaks, tested prototypes after midnight, and solved problems other engineers couldn't understand. He built custom dampeners, hidden diagnostic systems, predictive maintenance software, an adaptive operating mode that could automatically adjust the machine to different materials. And he never demanded credit. His grandfather had taught him something simple: fix it once, fix it right, fix it so it fixes itself. Marcus lived by those words. Then the company was acquired, and everything changed. The new CEO, Richard Hargrove, came from corporate finance. He understood spreadsheets, headcount, margins, cost reduction, but he had never spent an entire night listening to a machine because it sounded wrong. Within 6 weeks, Richard fired 8 experienced workers. He called them legacy overhead. He wanted younger employees, more degrees, more polished resumes, more people who looked like the future he imagined. Marcus watched experienced workers disappear one after another. People with 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, replaced by younger employees who had impressive qualifications, but almost no experience on a real factory floor. Then Richard hired Daniel Cross, 28 years old, top university, multiple engineering patents, perfect suit, perfect handshake, perfect confidence. Richard introduced him as the man who would modernize the Titan line. Daniel walked up to Marcus. "I'll be taking over the system." Marcus nodded. "Of course." Then he began explaining the machine, the custom calibration sequence, the resonance pattern, the thermal drift, the hidden diagnostic module. Daniel listened for about 10 minutes. Then he raised his hand. "I appreciate the walkthrough, Marcus. I have 3 patents in automated manufacturing. I think I can figure out a production line." 2 days later, Marcus was fired. That night, after Maya fell asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table. Bills were spread in front of him. Rent, school expenses, his mother's medication, utilities. His savings could last 6 weeks, maybe 5. He stared at the numbers. Then he looked at the wrench sitting beside him. The same kind of wrench his grandfather had used for the first time in years. Marcus wondered if being good at something was enough. Then came day 1. The Titan line began to drift, just slightly. Tiny calibration error. Daniel adjusted the parameters. He called it routine. Day 3. The error doubled. Day 7. Thermal sensors began reporting faults that did not exist in the manufacturer's database. Day 12. Production slowed. Engineers were brought in, then outside consultants. Nobody could understand the architecture, because the Titan line wasn't a standard machine. Marcus had built it differently. It had its own language, and only one man knew how to speak it. By day 16, the factory was in crisis. Defective components had climbed from under 2% to more than 30%. Production had dropped by over half, and the company's $12 million contract was in danger. The chairman called an emergency board meeting. "Tell me what happened to my machine." Richard Hargrove stood at the front of the room. "It's undergoing modernization." The chairman stared at him. "Who built it?" Silence. "I asked you a question, Richard. Who built the Titan line?" Richard hesitated. Then someone finally spoke. It was the operations director, Claire Morgan. "Marcus Reed." She continued. "He designed it from scratch." The chairman's expression changed. "You fired the man who built the machine?" Richard tried to defend himself. "He was maintenance staff. He didn't have the credentials." "I didn't ask about credentials. I asked whether you fired the man who built the machine responsible for 40% of our revenue." Nobody answered. The chairman called in Dr. Samuel Whitmore, a legendary automation specialist, 4 decades of experience, multiple patents, consultant to some of the largest manufacturers in the country. Dr. Whitmore spent 4 hours examining the Titan line. He opened panels, checked hydraulic systems, studied the control architecture, ran every diagnostic test available. Then he returned to the boardroom. Everyone waited. "Who built this?" "Marcus Reed." "Is he here?" "He was terminated." Dr. Whitmore removed his glasses. "This is one of the most sophisticated production systems I have ever seen. Bring him back." Richard swallowed. "Today." At 6 the next morning, Marcus was underneath a neighbor's pickup truck. His hands were covered in grease. His phone rang. It was Claire. "Marcus, I need you to listen before you say no." He climbed out from beneath the truck. "What happened?" "The Titan line is failing. Daniel can't fix it." Marcus said nothing. Dr. Whitmore inspected it. Another pause. "The chairman wants you back." Marcus looked at the grease on his hands, the same hands Richard had called unqualified. "Richard wants me back." "No." Claire took a breath. "The chairman wants you back." Marcus thought about Maya, his shrinking savings, the badge beside his grandfather's photograph. Then he said, "I'll come, but I have conditions." The next morning, Marcus walked through Meridian's front entrance. Not the service entrance, the front entrance. He wore clean work clothes, steel-toed boots, and his grandfather's old wrench was tucked into his back pocket. The factory floor went silent. Workers lined the walls. Executives watched from the balcony. Richard stood in the back. Daniel stood beside the dying Titan line. Marcus didn't greet anyone. He walked straight to the machine. He placed both hands against the main housing and closed his eyes. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then Marcus opened his eyes. You replaced the harmonic dampeners. Daniel stiffened. They were upgraded. They were standard. Yes. Marcus nodded. That's the problem. He opened the panel. These weren't supposed to be standard. Daniel looked confused. Marcus held up the replacement part. I designed the originals for this system. The Titan line doesn't run on factory frequencies. He pointed toward the machine. I tuned every dampener to the resonance profile of the entire system. Then he looked at Daniel. You put a metronome inside a jazz band. Marcus removed the replacement. He pulled a handmade component from his toolbox. Installed it. The machine shuddered, then stopped. The warning lights began going dark. One, then another, then another. Within minutes, the machine was running smoothly. Nobody spoke. Dr. Whitmore finally stepped forward. How did you diagnose that without running a single test? Marcus tapped the machine. My grandfather taught me to listen. The machine tells you what hurts. I built this one. I know its voice. Then Marcus found something Daniel had never discovered, a hidden panel. Inside was a small module with a green light pulsing like a heartbeat. What is that? Dr. Whitmore asked. Marcus smiled. I call it the pulse. It recorded everything, every pressure change, every temperature shift, every vibration, every modification made to the machine, including every mistake Daniel had made over the previous 18 days. The screen filled with data. The room went silent. The pulse had documented the entire collapse. Daniel's modifications had created the failures. Marcus had the evidence, but Marcus wasn't finished. He walked to the control panel, entered a command nobody recognized. The screen changed. 3 modes appeared. Standard, adaptive, full integration. Daniel stared. That isn't in the manual. Marcus looked at him. I know. He selected adaptive. The machine changed. Its speed adjusted. Pressure shifted. The system began responding to the material passing through it. Marcus fed 3 different metals into the line. Aluminum, steel, titanium. He didn't change a single setting. The machine adapted automatically. Perfect tolerances. 0 defects. Daniel whispered, that shouldn't be possible. Marcus calmly replied, it is when you build the machine to think for itself. Dr. Whitmore turned toward the executives. His voice was quiet, but every person heard him. You didn't fire a maintenance technician. You fired one of the most gifted engineers I have ever encountered, and then you replaced him with someone who didn't understand what he was looking at. Richard's face collapsed. The chairman turned toward him. Richard, we need to discuss the reports. Claire brought a folder into the room. Inside were years of documents. Marcus's engineering reports, his designs, his proposed modifications, his warnings, reports Richard's office had marked unnecessary. No action required. The chairman looked at Richard. You buried the work of the man who built this company's most valuable machine. Richard tried to speak. The chairman raised one hand. Don't. You were so focused on finding people who looked qualified, you failed to recognize the person who was actually qualified. Then Clay revealed the termination records. 8 experienced workers, most replaced by people with less hands-on experience. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Richard had believed credentials were proof of intelligence. Marcus had spent years proving that intelligence can live where nobody thinks to look. After the board meeting, Marcus sat in the old office with the chairman and Dr. Whitmore. The chairman spoke first. Marcus, I owe you an apology. Marcus said nothing. I want you to become chief engineer. Full authority over the Titan line. Then Dr. Whitmore made another offer. Senior consulting position with my firm. 2 opportunities. 2 powerful men, both finally recognizing what Marcus had always been. Marcus thought about Meyer, his grandfather, the wrench, the badge. Then he smiled. I'll take the chief engineer position. The chairman nodded. On one condition? Marcus shook his head. Two. First, call every worker you fired. Everyone. They deserve the choice to come back. The chairman nodded. Done. Marcus looked at him. Second, my name goes on the Titan Line blueprints, where it should have been from the beginning. The chairman stood. You have my word. A week later, Richard Hargrove was removed as CEO. An internal investigation uncovered the full extent of his decisions. Experienced workers had been pushed out. Engineering reports had been ignored, production had collapsed, and the man who had built the company's most valuable machine had been fired because leadership had judged his worth by his job title instead of his ability. Daniel resigned soon after, but before he left, he found Marcus alone in the maintenance bay. I didn't know, Daniel said. Marcus kept working. About the pulse, the adaptive system, any of it. Richard told me the Titan Line was outdated. Marcus finally looked at him. And you believed him? Daniel lowered his eyes. I wanted to believe I was the best person for the job. Marcus nodded. You're not a bad engineer. Daniel looked up. But you're not humble enough yet. Marcus picked up his wrench. Next time someone tries to show you how something works, let them finish. Daniel nodded and walked away. Months later, the company's biggest client renewed the contract, then expanded it. The $12 million agreement became $15 million a year. The workers who wanted to return were welcomed back, and the Titan Line ran better than it ever had. 6 months after Marcus was fired, he stood in an office overlooking the factory floor. Below him, the machine he had built hummed perfectly. 0 defects. Perfect rhythm. On his desk sat a photograph of Maya. Beside it was his grandfather's old wrench, the only inheritance that had ever truly mattered. Then Maya walked into the office. She looked down at the factory. Ali? Yet, baby girl? You built that? Marcus smiled. Yeah. She squeezed his hand. Can you teach me? Marcus looked at the machine, then at his daughter, and repeated the words that had carried him his entire life. Fix it once. Fix it right. Fix it so it fixes itself. And sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the person holding everything together. If this story made you think about a time someone underestimated you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever been judged by your job title, your appearance, your background, or the things you didn't have on your resume? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful stories about people who were overlooked until the world finally discovered what they were capable of. Because sometimes the greatest proof of your worth is what happens when you're gone.